So, Ceora Ford does absolutely amazing work, dev advocate at Okta, very, very involved in open source, has been for a while. And what we're all here to do is grow open source, and building communities around open source and really investing in and unlocking the audience around your open source projects is everything. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have any of this. And Ceora is going to walk through exactly how to do that. Big round of applause.
Thank you. Got it. Thank you. Okay. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the power of community. I think it's a great follow-up to the last point that James made wherever he is in the room. And it's also a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. As you'll see, I just want to preface this by saying this whole talk is basically going to be me oversharing and telling my whole life story. So I want to start off by giving a little introduction to myself because, like I said, this is basically about my life story. So I'm a Philadelphia native. I really like being down south because I feel that on the topic of community, there's a very nice sense of community here. People are nicer down south. People walk slower. They say good morning. They say hello, all that kind of good stuff on the street. And for me, it's a breath of fresh air coming from up north where it's not the same way. I'm also a developer advocate at Okta. I do a lot of work with people who are early in their career. Because me being someone who's also early in my career, I think it's really important to give those kind of people support. And I'm a React developer primarily. So I want to start off talking about my first real encounter with community. On the left, you'll see a picture of me. I think I was about 7 in that picture. And then on the right, I'm next to my mom. She wanted me to cover her face because she didn't want a bunch of strangers seeing her face. But I think I was about 15 in that picture. And in between 7 and 15, when I was around 11, my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I don't know if anyone here knows anything about that disease, but it's an autoimmune disease, and it greatly affects your ability to move around. It messes with your nervous system, all this kind of stuff. And for our family at the time, that was a huge blow. My mom had been like the center of our family. She was a very active person. She used to always take us places. We were always going places like she was very spontaneous and active. She was the fun person in her friend group. And then all of a sudden she was sick and could barely walk sometimes. And so for us, like I said, it was a huge blow. It changed our lives in a matter of a few months. And so I was 11. My oldest sister was 14. My youngest sister was 6 at the time. My dad worked at night. My mom was a stay-at-home wife, so she usually cooked for us and she cleaned and things like that. And so when she was sick like this, it left us in a very precarious situation. Who was going to cook for us? Who was going to help us clean? Who was going to take us to doctor's appointments during the day when my dad was sleeping for work? The only reason why we were able to survive that time is because we had a really strong community around us. We had friends and family who came through and cooked us meals that were actually really delicious. And I was a really picky eater at the time, so this was impressive to me. We had people who would take us to doctor's appointments. I remember during that time, when my mom had just been diagnosed and she was still basically in bed all day, I had gotten an ear infection and I needed to be taken to the doctors. And one of her friends took me to the doctor. And that was like something I never forgot. So we had people who were supporting us in all these ways, taking us to school trips, taking us to like do fun things on the weekend so that we could kind of get our mind off of what was happening with our family. And that was so important and impactful for me. And that was the first time that I really, really saw truly the power of community. It helped keep my family afloat during this difficult time. And so the next time that community kind of like returned to my life was during the pandemic, which might sound ironic because when the pandemic happened, we all know this, a lot of communities that were active during the time kind of paused or in some cases completely fell off the face of the earth. It was a time when we were not able to see our friends and family. It was a time when everything was just at a halt. I mean, you couldn't even be around people. You had to stay, we had to do the social distancing where you had to be 6 feet away from everybody. So for a lot of us, that was a huge and abrupt halt in community involvement. But for me, it was the time that I kind of discovered and stumbled into virtual community. So I got into tech during the pandemic, and one of the things that really helped me move along the way was that I invested a lot in virtual communities that help me to network and meet new people, that helped me get my first jobs and all those kind of things. And some of you may have experienced that as well. And so it was also during this time, as I was trying to get into the tech community, as I was trying to get into the tech industry, that I realized that community is not very important for some people. Now, again, I'm coming from a background where community supported my whole family during that time. I stumbled into tech communities that helped me to get into the tech industry. And as I was moving through my career, as I was working different jobs, again, I realized that community was not important for everybody, which was a little bit strange for me. And so before we even get into how we even got to that point, how we as a society pretty much got to the point where community is taking a back seat in our lives, I want to talk about the definition of community. So I want to preface this by saying I left my glasses at home, so I hope that I can read this on a monitor. So if I get a couple words wrong, don't judge me. But I want to read to you the definition of community when we Google it. So we'll first talk about the first one. So a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. So I think this is if we look around us, we would probably traditionally say this is what most people think of when they think of community. So living in the same area, sharing the same characteristics, sometimes looking like the people around you, that kind of thing. And if you think about that, the first time that we confront or encounter community is probably in school. And how would most of us describe school? Some of us had a good experience, some of us found good community, some of us had good friends around us that we may know and hang out with to this day. But I think overall, we would probably describe school as being competitive. There's always people that you're competing with academically, trying to prove that you're the smartest, that you're the fastest in gym class, that you're the prettiest, all this kind of stuff. And this is what we kind of carry into our professional lives when we graduate high school, go to university, and enter the workforce. We start to carry this spirit of competition with us, and it colors how we view the world, how we work, how we move through our communities, which, if we look around and if we think about it, is very evident, and it's not the best thing. And I had an experience early on in my career where I encountered this second definition of community, which I think is a much better and much more holistic way to look at it and a much more positive way to look at community. So we look at the second definition, it says the condition of sharing or having certain attitudes and interests in common. So I like this because it's not dependent on location, it's not dependent on any physical characteristics that we can have in common, but it's dependent on attitudes and interests. And I feel like that's a much more, like I said, holistic way to view community and a better way to go about finding people who are like-minded. So again, one of the first time that I confronted this was one of my first experiences. This was before I officially entered the tech community, the tech industry, and this was before the pandemic. I had a teaching job at a summer camp. This was my first encounter with actually coding. I got hired at this coding camp for girls. It's called Code with Clossie. It's a nonprofit organization where they teach young girls how to code during the summer for 2 weeks. This was the iOS development class. I walked into this as an instructor assistant, and I knew nothing about iOS development, nothing about Swift, very little about coding, period. But one of the things that I loved about this program was that we got to enforce with these young girls the power of community. And I remember one of the most impactful and memorable conversations I had was with the students. I think we were about a week into the program, so this was about halfway through. And this was at lunchtime, and it was one of those very rare, super candid, raw, and honest conversations that we don't have that often, but I will never forget it. I was talking with the girls, and one of them mentioned how she walked in on the first day expecting to have to compete with the other girls to prove that she was smarter than them, to prove that she could code better than them. And because most of them and most of the girls at the table at lunchtime agreed with her, because these are students who are coming from these advanced high schools where they focus on science and STEM education, and most of them were Ivy League bound to go to the best universities in the country. And again, like we talked about previously, in school, in academia, a big thing is competition. So they walked into this room, into the classroom, expecting to have to compete with all the other girls. But slowly, as the days went on, we did a lot of exercises, team building exercises with them. We did a lot of group projects and things like that. And we always emphasized working together over competing with each other. And because of that, it kind of shifted their mindset. So they went from walking in and thinking and seeing their fellow students as competitors to seeing them as collaborators. And so this is so important because these were girls who were going to be going into computer science programs in university. They were ages 13 to 18, so a lot of them were graduating directly that summer and going to move into these college campuses and go into these classrooms where they would maybe be one of the few, if not only, women in the classroom. And so this was powerful because they built a community in this program. They built a community that would stick with them maybe for the rest of their lives. The thing that was really impressive to me was that so many of these students kept in touch after the program was over. I'm in touch with some of them now, and a lot of them have gone to hackathons together. They've built open source projects together. Even when they go to universities across the country, they still have each other because they stay connected virtually. And some of them have even started companies together, startups together. And so I think this was such an impactful and powerful thing for me to experience so early on in my career because it emphasized one really powerful concept to me. And that's this: for people who value community, they end up entering the workforce and building strong teams. And these strong teams become the basis for strong companies. So like I said, these students, at the very, very beginning of their career, they realized the power of community because of the classes they had with each other and because of the bonds they built with each other and because of the way they collaborated with each other. So when they start their new jobs, they have this concept of community, not competition. They have this concept of community that they'll carry and pass on to their team members. And eventually, it'll get to a point where their company as a whole will become strong. And so I think this is beautiful because community is what can make the difference between good and great. So a person who has a career backed by community will be great. A team that is backed by community will be great. And a company that's backed by community will be great. And I have this illustration here of a basic sundae, which tastes good. You know, it's delicious. But it's not like the banana split on the side where you have the banana and the cherry and the whipped cream and all that kind of stuff. So this is what you can have in your career if you make the time and effort to value community and support community and participate in community. But how do you do that? How does one get to a point where they build a community around them? We talked about the pandemic earlier, and like honestly, some of that is still left over. I've been to a lot of cities where the meetup scene is not the way it used to be, so it kind of leaves us in a place where it's like, well, where do I even go? Where do I begin? And so I think the important thing to remember, like I said, is not looking like each other. It's not being from the same background. It's not being from the same place. Really, the most important thing is these two things: having shared values and shared goals. This is what's going to help you build community around yourself that will support you and enrich your career and your life in general. So I think that All Things Open is a great example of this. I went on their website and I was looking for like anything that would be a sign of values, and they literally have it. I can't remember what page it is, but it's the values that the organizers promote through the creation of this conference. It's access, diversity, and world-class content and value. And so this is amazing because all of us come together from different places, different cities around the world, different backgrounds. We all look different from each other, but the thing that draws us together and makes all of this work is that we all have these shared values of access, diversity, world-class content, and value. And it makes for such a great experience, and all of us can attest to this because we're here today. And then we have shared goals. So I went on the website again, and I looked for basically why would somebody want to attend. Now, I planned on reading this out loud, but like I said, I love my glasses at my hotel, so you guys can read it for yourselves. But basically, it shows the shared goals that all of us came together today to partake in and to share with each other. And again, it makes for a beautiful experience. I'm sure, like, come to me afterwards and like tell me what your favorite part about the conference was. But basically, all of this is what makes this work. This is what keeps things like this so enjoyable for all of us. And I feel like everybody here could attest to that. This is one of like my favorite experiences that I've had, one of my favorite conferences I've been to. This year is my first time. And I'm very impressed by how things work, how comfortable I feel, how a part of a community I feel. But it's because of these shared values and goals that we all have. So what can you do as an individual? We talked about like what the conference organizers have done, and like not a lot of us have the time or the energy or the money to like put on something like this, right? But you don't have to put on your own conference to invest in community or show that you value community. You could take small steps. And those small steps could be something as simple as peer programming with a junior member of your team. It could be something as simple as answering a question on Stack Overflow, making an open source contribution. These are small steps that we as individuals can take. And it doesn't have to take over our whole life. They could be small steps that take a little bit of time that show that we value community. And these small steps gather together to make a big impact. So what happens if each of us does one thing a week, one thing even a month that invests in community? It starts to have a snowball effect. And you would be surprised how much a small effort can impact someone in big ways. I've had moments where I've gotten a DM on Twitter from someone who was a big name in the industry to me, and they just said something like, "I think you're doing great work." And that to them probably took 1 minute. They probably didn't think much about it, but for me, it made a world of difference. And this is how you can invest in community, and these are the small things you can do that can have a big impact. And again, it brings us back to this snowball effect of having this investment in community and caring about community. We carry that into the teams that we're part of. And as we grow community and we make community the basis of the teams we're part of, we create strong companies as well. And so I love this slide. This is my favorite slide. This is my favorite slide because I drew this myself, and I feel like it's really impressive. So basically, thank you. Yeah, I drew this myself on the airplane. So anyway, I love this illustration because it shows that it's not just a snowball effect, but it's a cycle. So when you give to community, when you give to others, and when you invest in community, it always comes back around to you. And as you can see, one person passes the gift to another person until it comes all the way back. And this is really important because, again, I don't think that you should invest in community with the mindset that, like, I want to get something back out of you. But that's always how it goes. And I'll, again, give my own experience with this. So this is the team. This is my team at Okta. This is the DevRel team that I'm part of. A few people are missing from this picture. We took this a couple weeks ago. And I love my team. And my team is very important. And I'll tell you why. They're very important to me. So as you can see, I got into the tech industry, and I got in through community and investing in community and making friends and networking like James was talking about earlier. And I also had the mindset that so many people have given to me. People have referred me to jobs. They've done coding interview run-throughs with me, all kinds of amazing things to help support me and get me to the next level. So I felt like it was my job to make sure I paid it forward. So I was always doing things. I was doing content. I was doing podcast interviews, all kinds of things to give back to the community, supporting meetups and things like that. Until it got to a point around a little over a year ago, I got really sick. So I had been doing all this stuff for the community, for my coworkers, even for my family, and then it got to the point where I was so extremely burnt out that I became so depressed that I could not get out of bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I think I hadn't been on Twitter for a good couple months, and it was just, I was at my lowest point, and I felt like I'm going to lose everything. I felt I had done all this work for the past 2 years to get to this point, and then I got so sick that I couldn't do anything, and I was like, I'm going to lose everything. But I didn't. I didn't lose everything because I made sure that I was a part of a team that valued community. And so while I was in this point where I couldn't do much, I couldn't contribute anything to the team because I was so sick, my team made up for it. They accommodated me. It got to the point where I needed to get medical leave, so I took off from work for about a month, and then I came back. And it was like no time had ever passed. My team made sure to do things to make me feel like I was contributing to the team. They helped me build up my confidence again because, again, I was so depressed. It kind of, I don't know who here has experienced depression, but it can totally erode your sense of self, your sense of confidence. I got back to the team and I was better, but I still felt like, do I belong here? And my team put so much into me, they poured so much into me that it helped me get to this point today where I could be on the stage talking to you guys about the importance of community. And that's why I say this is so important to me because I've lived it. I've seen firsthand how much community can make a change, it can make a difference, and not just your career, but in your whole life in general. So I want to end this by saying we are better together. Never forget that. Carry that with you throughout the day. And I also want to challenge you to make a point to take one of those small steps to show that you care about community. So thank you all for listening so much. I really appreciate it. You can follow me on LinkedIn. My name, obviously, there's Ceora Ford. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, and later on today, and I don't know what time it is now, but like in maybe like an hour or so, or like a half an hour, I'm gonna be giving another talk, so make sure to see me. I think I'm gonna be in Ballroom B, I wanna say, but I'll be giving a talk on identity security, so you can see me there as well. Thank you all so much for listening.